Welcome to the Peace Action Manhattan monthly public forum. Tonight we are going to be hearing from our colleague, Dr. Alexander Jornitski. Alexander Jornitski is a mathematician and systems architect. As a system architect, he regularly faced the problem of formulating goals of complex systems. He formalized goals of big and small social systems that led him to formulate the idea of the ultimate goal of any human being and the ultimate goal of humankind. Today, he will explain the important connection between the purpose of life and nuclear disarmament.
So I will start with this question. How to achieve peace? And this question, is it possible really to achieve reliable peace for a long period of time? And this leads to this kind of consideration. If by human nature we have the same direction to go, if we have one goal for all of us, then peace could be achieved much easier. Comparing to situation which we have today, when there is permanent competition, and competition is even kind of the goal of our life. So American dream, for example, says that the goal of society is provide for every member of society opportunity to fight for money, fame, and power. Just with equal opportunity, but the goal of money, fame, and power is not questioned. If in this way the goals, aims, purposes of people are opposite to one another, and in my opinion, in this situation, war is inevitable, because as soon as people achieve some inequality, people who have more power or money, they will try to have even more and more and more. And current situation, when we have such a huge difference between very rich and very poor, even inside the United States of America, even without speaking on a bigger scale between rich people in rich countries and extremely poor people in extremely poor countries. So I will try to explain today that there is really, fortunately, by our nature, we have one ultimate goal for all of us. And clear understanding of this goal could lead to much bigger cooperation between people. And in some sense, it could lead not only to nuclear disarmament, but even to solving some other problems like inequality, global warming, and so on and so forth. So I wrote 4 books about the meaning of life and the purpose of life. And there are several ways to explain what is the purpose of life, and I probably will start with this one. what could be the biggest, so people could have smaller and bigger goals. And what could be the biggest imaginable achievement? The biggest imaginable achievement would be to do something good, not only for your country, but for entire humankind. Like maybe some drug against cancer, or against extreme hatred in society, or maybe just some drug to make immediately America great again, or to make Chris Christie great again. So what could be bigger? The bigger will be to do something great, not only for entire humankind, but maybe even for entire life, to invent some new energy which could stop, destroying or exhausting all natural resources, to deforest an entire planet, and so on and so forth. So what could be bigger than that? And something could be bigger than that. Because when we say to do good to people, there is one thing we usually forget about, that we could make good to people 10 years in the future, or 100 years in the future, or 1,000 years in the future. But it is very interesting to take into account that if humankind stops existing 1,000 years from now, not only all human achievement will disappear, but if that happens, even more terrible thing would happen. It would make meaningless all human suffering. And probably I don't need to say how much suffering throughout human history people had. So, along this line, we could conclude that maybe the ultimate purpose of human life is to make humankind immortal. In this way, if we manage to understand how to do good to next person, and how to teach people to do person to the next and to the next to the next, even our small achievement could be multiplied by number of next generations. So this is what I believe is the meaning and purpose of human life. If I had time, I will show how to come to this conclusion in a different way. But one of the ways is to note that the functioning of every living creature, or even the functioning of any cell in organism, for example, of human being, the ultimate function, the function of cell is to contribute to muscle or to organ. And that is to contribute to functioning of body. And that, if we look wider, it's to contribute again to society. So we see that not only kind of positive human goals contribute to immortality of life, but we see kind of coherent system of all functions of all life organisms, starting from the level of the cell and going toward bigger and bigger environmental systems and so on and so forth. So this is my first point, is that fortunately we have one goal for all of us. And I would just say that for many years I'm discussing with different people, and I made presentation here in February, and after that I had, for example, a few discussion with Florindo Troncelliti and with some other people, of course, and that discussions kind of clarify this picture, and there are several different ways to come to the same conclusion, and today it's pretty clear for me. But if I had time to go along those lines of explanation, it would be also much clearer what could we do towards that goal and how it would be related to problem of peace. Because the war is the brightest manifestation how we kind of go opposite direction. So this is our goal, and of course the next question is how we succeed towards that goal. And the other way to formulate the same goal is to say that our ultimate goal is to decrease chances that life will be ever lost, that it will be no alive creature, and no humans, of course. So our goal is to decrease chances of ultimate catastrophe from ever happening. But if we think about the last century, we see very clearly that the chances of ultimate catastrophe increasing. Because 100 years ago, nobody had any possibility by pushing a button to start large-scale nuclear war. Today we have such a possibility. I don't say that nuclear war will necessarily destroy entire humankind or to destroy entire life. Because even after full-scale exchange between America and Russia, there is some slight possibility that some people would survive. But I just wonder how many people would envy that existence. And even if humankind will be completely lost, it does not mean entire life will be lost. But the chances that life will keep going forever will dramatically go down, because currently it's only humans who are able to take natural life beside this planet. And eventually it has to be done. So, would I like it or not? We are failing that goal. Instead of going forward, we're going backward. Not because we are evil people, but somehow our local strife to make life better leads to this situation when the risk is increasing. So what does it mean toward every single person? Does it mean anything? If it does mean anything, what it is? It means that unwillingly we contribute to that backward movement. And so unwillingly we participating in the highest imaginable crime. We increasing chances that not only, as I said, not only achievements of humankind would be lost, but in some sense it would entire history of evolution will be lost. Or even if you believe that God created humans and life, the entire creation will be lost. So this is a part which is related to this backward movement. And the next thing which I would like to say is that I am also thinking about it. I'm convinced that there is a way out of this mess. What is that way? Let's imagine for a minute that there is at least a small group of people who believe that it is impossible to live like this. And let's imagine that what they will think about. They will think like this: okay, there is this problem of nukes, and what could we do about it? Of course, there are a lot of peace organizations, and there is international initiatives, even currently, to abolish nukes. But if people would understand how terrible it is, they could organize mass movement against nukes. By the way, we figured out something about Donald Trump right now, and about Kim Kardashian, something which we did not know about them. We know what they're living for, objectively. Objectively. Not what, and Chris Christie too. So, not what they think they live for, but what they objectively live for as human beings who belong to humankind and natural life. I'm not saying it would be easy to convince Chris Christie or Kim Kardashian or Donald Trump that it's good to start nuclear disarmament, but maybe some number of other people would agree. So what will happen in this group of people? They will say, okay, we could start this big movement. And what else knowledge of this goal would lead us to? It could help us with global warming too. And it could help us with big range of environmental problems. And maybe, and then later, it will help us even with problem of inequality. How? So what leads to increased probability of war? Of course, or what leads to increased pollution, global warming? Maybe if people would really decide that it is crucial to decrease our impact on environment and on forests and on entire nation, maybe they could seriously considering one-child policy around the globe. I think in today's system of values, it's absolutely impossible. Today's system of values includes the bigger family, the bigger my contribution to something. But it sounds that it's contribution for something including environmental impact, including stronger competition for dwindling resources and so on and so forth. So despite in current way of thinking, it's completely impossible. I have no illusions about it. In some new approach to life, it could be much more possible. I wouldn't say, of course, not easy, but the more these ideas become clear, and the more people could understand the importance of these ideas, the more are chances to avoid global warming and complete deforestation, which kind of looming year after year after year, and other problems. And now I need just to outline how it finally could lead toward decreasing of inequality. I think many of you could agree that current ideas about decreasing inequality don't work, like looking honestly at it. For the last 30 years that inequality is increasing continuously and reached pretty bad levels. So what about inequality? So this group of people, I just want to point to this interesting fact that spread of these ideas could lead to kind of leaderless society. Because currently we have this myth that there are some people called political leaders, politicians, who know what to do. But actually, the problem of decision making is the absence of this long-term goal, all-encompassing goal. Because for many years I saw in my practice that the most serious problem in developing computer system and implementing them is not technical skills of people who are involved, but an ability to formulate goals clearly and distinctly. And if I had more time today, I will show how this goal of making life immortal immediately decomposes to smaller goals. So if this, and it will lead to some horizontal structure, international horizontal structure of people who quote unquote would know what to do. Currently, there is a lot of wonderful work formulating what is wrong now. There are very good works describing what is really bad with state, with idea of state. Saint LeBron is here. I saw his presentation on YouTube. And Joe Friendly, I read his articles when he describes in very short and very kind of carefully detailing the most important stuff and so on and so forth. So it is not new that situation is bad. What is new is this guy is sitting here, it's me, who says there is a big goal, and it would be much less discussion what to do, because that goal automatically leads to some decisions. And one of those decisions is necessity to rid of nukes as soon as possible. Because as soon as you say that goal is to decrease the ultimate catastrophe, this picture of nukes immediately jumps to your mind. Again, this idea that nukes are dangerous is not new. We know this for 70 years. But something is new here. No, for example, it becomes clear that this is kind of very hot issue, not only for politicians and decision makers, but for everyone. Because this feeling that you move backward is actually horrible. I need to illustrate it in some way. Just imagine some horrible things could unfortunately happen in human life. For example, if a person is happy in family and he or she discovers that a wife or husband is unfaithful. It is horrible, like read Anna Karenina or whatever you want to read, or think about your friends or whatever goes on. But this terrible situation still touches only part of your life. It's a part of your life because you could have it is very invasive and horrible, but still it touches part of your life. This backward movement, do we like it or not, it is all-encompassing failure. And this is something new. And this is unquestionable. This is really happening. And there are some other things which I would say are new in this approach. That this picture, if people will have this picture, it would, for example, solve the problem of verification, which is big stumbling block in all verification. Verification, to check if they dismantle, rockets in Russia, in China, in Pakistan, or in the United States of America, which is the most peaceful country in the world, of course. And we need to wait next 15 minutes until it gets great again. So if this idea would somehow start spreading, the problem of verification will be simple. Simpler, I never say simple, but much simpler than today. Because today it's believed to be business of politicians or military specialists or whatever. Moreover, it could make nuclear disarmament permanent, because if these ideas will hold, people would care, nukes will not, show up again. And also it could make anti-nuclear measures much more reliable. So people would decide to close all mines producing uranium, which is many things which I'm touching today are long discussed in people who are very dedicated to nuclear disarmament. What is new is kind of new approach, and that approach, it is, I don't say it's easier to close uranium mines around the globe and to make barbed wire around them and put cameras so everybody will see that nobody is mining uranium anymore. But in current value system, it is impossible. In current value system, we need nukes for mutually assured destruction. And in short term, it is okay. But in longer term, it is completely meaningless, because we're pushing the risk of nuclear war to our children and grandchildren. And even if that risk per year would not increase, eventually it will start. So this is kind of a different aspect how things could change. And so this is shortly what is the hope. And now I would like to say what are obstacles toward going on this. It's 1, 2, 3 plan. Number one, to find some people who would not only nod, but would also do something practical to devote some time. And another problem is that I achieved this kind of clear understanding only at the end of my life, and I don't have Nobel Prize to show you, to say, look how great I am, maybe you would believe these ideas. I have some scientific achievements, and some of them, I would say, impressive, but I never had time to have a name, to become known, because it is, by the way, the story of this discovery is pretty interesting. But if I would fight for fame, I wouldn't have time for this kind of result. So another problem is that I'm not any big authority. Another problem is that people don't like to be taught how to live. And also, every person, as far as I understand it, every person has feeling of his or her greatness. And many people are ambitious to solve this problem by themselves. Who is that guy who is coming and say, hello, I know what you are living for? And so people are ambitious, and unfortunately, this feeling of ambition is misplaced, because real greatness is not the loudness of applause and not the fame or money. The real achievement is that positive wave which you could create forever. That is real greatness, which has nothing to do with fame of even, great scientists contribute to the progress, and great actors and great writers. But that contribution is conditional on starting to turn society toward to abolishing nuclear weapons and solving other big problems. Because if system of values, if something which is very, very deep, and very deep is what people want, it is system of values, is on that level, nothing will change. The chances of survival are not 1%. It's exactly zero. Exactly zero. Now, maybe, so these things which I am talking about, I'm pretty confident. But now at least we need to break. What is the sound? We need break? Or I could talk a little bit more?
I think either one, whatever you want to do.
So a few moments more. So what I was talking until now is pure system analysis. It exists like I could talk about it in just conversational way as I did it now, but I could talk about it with much deeper with much more argument and to the degree of very high confidence. So what I was talking until this moment is kind of on mathematical level of confidence. It's not question about this. And now I will talk a little bit about politics. There are many, just returning that we figured out something about Donald Trump. Now we will figure out about him a little bit more. There are many ways to talk about a recent election campaign. And but I would talk about it this way, that it looks like during this campaign, this thing has happened, that people who were watching television, they saw a person, first of all, who is crying very loudly. And the person was crying, "I know all your enemies, and I promise you I will destroy all of them. I will destroy all illegal immigrants, entire country of Mexico, China, ISIS, whatever. We don't win anymore, but now I promise we will have tremendous victory over all your enemies. We will make America great again forever." What?
It will be a beautiful thing.
What do you say?
It will be a beautiful thing.
Yes, you all jobs will go back because I will tell them, I will scare them to death as I scared Jeb Bush, Chris Christie, and all those great guys. Even they will be great again, all together with the rest of America. They will follow after a while. And the people, the first time in their lives, they had a purpose of life. That is the shiny goal, the shiny leader, and we become great as contributing to his success. So yesterday we were nobody, but now we have the hope to become somebody, to participate in that amazing picture, amazing picture. And that would be not just work towards that goal, but that will be victorious fight towards that goal. So this is definitely misplaced understanding of greatness. This is fake greatness. And the greatness of money, power, and fame is fake, because you could achieve everything and then humankind disappears and nobody anymore to applaud you. So it looks like just a little bit more towards this. When I was reading the articles in Washington Post during election campaign, all that articles, so people working for Washington Post understood that even saying negative things inside the article, they kind of contribute to his fame, to fame of Donald Trump. So at the end of any article, if you remember, it was written that he is serial liar, that he is racist, that he wants to stop entering this country for 1.5 billion Muslims and so forth. But maybe just maybe, it would be more efficient to say at the end of any article that Donald Trump cannot be trusted with nuclear code. Just at the end of any article, just these few words, that he cannot be trusted with nuclear code, and this is absolutely true. He cannot. Maybe many of you know about nuclear clock. That nuclear scientists publish this changing probability of nuclear war. And I think that on 19th of December, that clock will go down significantly. And on January 20th, it will go down again. And if I had a louder voice, maybe I would convince Washington Post to start publish after every article, to end every article with this line: Donald Trump cannot be trusted with nuclear code. Maybe not everybody agrees, but at least people who work for Washington Post, for New York Times, for Politica.com, for Huffington Post, they could make it. And people could disregard it, as they disregard that Donald Trump is lying, and he is horrible toward women and toward, disabled people, and it goes on and on. And he is a bad person. But comparing to this nuclear pattern, everything else is smaller. So maybe at the end, I will just to illustrate how this a little bit, I never had the chance to say how these ideas started with me. And it will be also 1 minute, or I don't have it. I have it. Florindo Troncelliti is keeping me. Do you, everything is okay? Okay, so how it all started. It was January 1988. I was in my 30s. And it happened by some interesting circumstances that an old lady approached me and told me that her husband has died a month ago, and she wants to know if she will ever see him again. So it was obviously a question about afterlife. And I felt I can say her something, at least some consolation, but I needed time to think about it. And I asked her who was her late husband, and she told me that he was a physics teacher. And she gave me some examples of his life, and I had this picture of good teacher, which was easy for me because I had an amazing teachers. So while he was talking, she told me some examples, how he interacted with students, and I told her, you know what? Your husband, who is not here anymore, he helped me now to understand what is the purpose of life. Because he was impacting his students, and when you saw it, it was impacting you, and now it's impacting me. And I see this chain, how it goes. I understand that he impacted his students, and they could impact other people. and human impact sometimes could decrease. And sometimes just opposite, it could increase over time. And in vast majority of time, we just don't think about it. We don't see this mechanism. But now I see that probably the purpose of life is to create this positive wave. So if your husband would not be alive, how could he help me? So she started to cry, and that was what she told me about that teacher of student was combined in my mind with one thing which I discovered just 1 week before. And that thing is that the textbook on geometry, which I was excited to read at the age of 10, because I saw, oh my gosh, this is a reason, just few axioms, and people build this entire amazing system with strict proof of everything. I figured out that my textbook, that Soviet textbooks on geometry, was kind of following the book, but by Euclid, which was written more than 2,000 years before. And Euclid was following some ideas which were developing in Babylonia, between Tigris and Euphrates 2,000 years before. So this is just a picture how achievement is, going forward and forward. And that all that achievement would never happen if people would not, grow grain. And we forgot that. We remember only Mozart's and Velasquez's and so on and so forth. Time for break?
This is Alexander Jornitski's book, The Universal Meaning of Life and the Anatomy of Human Happiness. I left a bunch of these papers over there. This is an article that's titled UN Votes to Outlaw Nuclear Weapons in 2017. So a lot of people don't know that the UN voted this year to outlaw nuclear weapons. And in February 2017, they're going to be organizing talks here in Manhattan to prepare to implement that ban on nuclear weapons, internet worldwide. So how that's going to happen is going to be very interesting, but I think there might be a role for peace action in that.
Have you seen the film or read the book Command and Control by Eric Schloss?
Command and Control?
Yeah, Eric Schloss.
I had not neither read the book nor seen the film, but I listened to entire episode on WNYC.
Because it's another angle on it, because it's about the accidents that have happened. The new accidents that happened in this country, on site, in accidents that not to do with sending a bomb somewhere else, but to do with just on site these accidents that have happened over the years in these nuclear sites. And there was a big one in around the time of the Carter administration. The Titan II blew up, and the warhead did not blow up. Obviously, we would know if it had. But the warhead, they lost the warhead for a while. They finally found it in a ditch. I mean, today that wouldn't happen because now they can trace everything can be traced. Yeah. That wouldn't happen today. But it was a very scary thing because they didn't know. And it was because somebody dropped a tool, and it hit a fuel tank and put a hole in the fuel tank. And this is apparently very unusual. Usually the tools, if they were dropped, just fell straight down.
There is, of course, if somebody hadn't seen this before, Wikipedia has very good article about nuclear accidents.
Yeah.
And specifically, if I remember correct, one separate article about several situations when nuclear war almost started.
But
And-
I understand that, but I'm talking about another dimension now. Not
Action.
only nuclear war, but actions in this country that could end up
Yes,
blowing
yes,
up a whole section of Arkansas, which
yes.
is where it happened.
Yeah,
Or-
there are a
or more
variety
than that.
of risks. We have a risk of explosion in South.
The people they interviewed in the film, I'm reading the book now, the people they interviewed in the film said were all people who worked on it. You know, they weren't outsiders. They were all people who were evaluating it or fixing
Yes,
problems.
I would-
And they said, one of them said, you know, and Schlosser said, you know, we have good equipment, good people, but there's also luck. And one person at the end said, eventually luck
Yes,
will run out. and
what I
it'll blow up.
what I try to say answering this specific question, that today what I was talking about, it's multifaceted thing, and I said nothing about practical actions which I propose. And that practical actions, just first thing, on every month, every 6th day of the month, and on 6 days because of Hiroshima, every 6th day of the month, some big demonstrations have to start simultaneously in different capitals. Because, of course, American militarism is horrible, but if you have a slogan against American militarism, you will encounter, you know, counter arguments and so on and so forth. It is very important to do it simultaneously in different capitals every 6th day of the month, and rain check is 9th, because this is Nagasaki Day. So, again, I don't say this is easy, but if this thing not starting, we have no reason to do anything in our life, because all our efforts go in vain. And of course, it is important to make protests near military facilities. So this has to become very active and very quickly, because with this new president, risk really increases. If we cannot stop him from becoming president, at least in some sense we have to do everything we can to take nuclear button from him. Not button itself, but to make this big movement very quickly. The risk is very high.
I mean, that's important. I agree. It's important if we can do that. I don't know if we can, but I mean, that's only part of the picture. And the other part is, what if we blow ourselves up?
Absolutely.
I mean, and that's something to really, I think about, because, and most people are not aware of that. I wasn't aware of it. I mean, I knew that. I know there's always been a risk we might bomb someone else. I've known that most of my life, but I didn't know that there were all these accidents happening.
By the way, I was participating in project in former Soviet Union, actually in Belarus, about consequences of Chernobyl catastrophe. And I think also this approach to the purpose of life, it could lead simultaneously to wide action, including closing nuclear plants, because they are not only producer of waste, but they are kind of slippery slope toward nuclear weaponry. So there is, of course, for example, there is big discussion inside Greenpeace if nuclear energy has to be, abolished too altogether with nuclear weapons. And I think there is good argument to abolish nuclear energy too. Some other questions?
Joe and Sane and I and other people attended a forum a couple years ago, actually, with Helen Caldicott, Dr. Helen Caldicott, the British nuclear scientist. Australian, sorry. And she...
Australia is closer to Britain. Anyway, yeah.
She had a speaker there who informed us that the greatest risk of nuclear exchange that he could see came from the fact that artificial intelligence was now controlling a great deal of the detection and response business. And there was that story, The Man Who Saved the World, about the Russian guy who didn't respond to
So he's substituted by robot now. It's good news.
Yeah, so now he's substituted by a robot, so automatically they're going to push the button.
Right.
You know, and that is, they think that that increases the likelihood that there'll be an accidental exchange, and that's really where the greatest
But
risk
very
is.
smart.
Have you thought about that, artificial intelligence and the effect of that in this nuclear business?
I would put it this way. It is obvious that throughout human history, unfortunately, the brightest inventions of human mind and technology are always used for war purposes, in war. And of course, the problem with artificial intelligence is probably that as soon as it's already going on this way, that it will enrich people who are already rich. It will depend who will hold control of that artificial intelligence, and we know who have control over all resources we have, for all of us. So I think this kind of idea, what is the purpose of life and what to do about, it is also idea in general what to do about war. Because as soon as you hear the purpose of life is to make life immortal, it is not the purpose of make yourself great again, or your country, or even humankind. It immediately sounds peace, if you think about it. And this mutually assured destruction, it is false alternative between nuclear war and regular war. The real question is how to organize movement for peace in the widest possible range. And I think this purpose of life is the strongest argument which could be made in the field of reason. Of course, there are a lot of things could be made in the field of emotions, and it's very important people produce films and pieces of art speaking about necessity of getting rid of nukes. But in the field of reason, I think this is the best possible direction, the best.
My niece came back from 2 years in the Peace Corps in Ukraine a couple of years ago, and she has thyroid cancer. Isn't there an increase in thyroid cancers in Ukraine and Belarus because of Chernobyl?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes, I know that numbers. They are not very high, per se. But yes, thyroid cancer is one of few very established relations to Chernobyl catastrophe. In general, I would say that center of Ukraine was not damaged as much. And the most damaged areas were in Belarus, because the winds, predominant winds, were moving to the north. And even even Wikipedia has some maps, but scientists have maps not only for general, pollution with radiation material, but for specific components and so on and so forth. But in general, it is to the north from Chernobyl and throughout Belarus, especially south part of Belarus, and some areas in Russia, in Brest region, there are some chunks. It is very unequally distributed, but center of Ukraine, I wouldn't say it would be a big impact. Yeah, it is happening all these years later, but the scientific problem of establishing connection, cause and effect connection between pollution and sickness rate and mortality is very intricate problem. I spent decades and I published a lot of articles about it. And just if we have, it is very interesting. It is very interesting. When I started that problem back in 1982, I started to lead a big project in former Soviet Union, how pollution is impacting sickness rate. And both problems were very big in former Soviet Union, in big industrial cities. And when we started collecting data, the first plots we produced, they shown that the higher the pollution, the lower is sickness rate. And it was the reason for some very serious research. So it is not because pollution is not dangerous, but because establishing that connection needs very sophisticated tools. But speaking about mid on South Ukraine, I would not say cause and effect.
I find it difficult to understand how what you're suggesting could be accomplished because of just, again, greed and arrogance and all this sort of stuff. And you know, it would almost have to be like we'd have to have one world, which some of these one worlders want. And then, of course, if we had one world, there would be the equivalent of an emperor there and his inner group, which would be ruling the rest of the world. And that would be another variety of totalitarianism. You know, and so I don't know how it could all.
The question.
And this has always bothered me.
Yes. Current situation is very unfortunate because there is no alternative to the pitchfork of fame, money, and power. I'm coining this term, pitchfork. Money, power, and fame. There is no alternative is the appeal to goodness. Love your neighbor. So people have Bible in one hand and they have this pitchfork in another hand. So there is, in some sense, ultimately there is no alternative because to survive you need to fight for some wealth, some recognition, and some power. But ultimately it goes the same way. What I'm talking about is that there is real alternative. The real alternative. Because what's happening, for example, speaking about young people, they come to this world and the society offers to them nothing but fighting for social status, for that pitchfork. And this is real alternative. And this is real opportunity to fight, you know, for peace and to create this new system of values, to have some alternative. So what I'm kind of proposing is to significantly change priorities. As soon as you have a bread and shelter, which would be difficult, of course, in America, so you go in debt for your entire life. As soon as you have necessities, the next thing on your priority list is this spreading these ideas and getting action against news. Because I am repeating myself, but this is if you allow yourself to think about this And you have to think about this way. It was for me a shock to realize that I spent big chunk of my life in vain. That locally I wanted something good, like participated in that environmental projects in Soviet Union. That throughout my life, when I was small, it was like 2 countries when I was born with nukes. Think about it, what's happening now. What we giving to next generation. And it's my appeal to any one of you. The rest of your life, please help me. Help to spread the word. I have website. If you Google my name, you will see my website. It's underdeveloped, but it's so, or we will have this on YouTube, right? Maybe you could suggest to your friends this clip on YouTube. And through this organization, Peace Action Manhattan, also I think we could develop some next steps. So spread the word. I think it will be very good if I would manage to spread it. I don't know. Oh, human nature. Just 1 second. This is really very old and very serious philosophical question since time of Aristotle. The nature of hammer is to put nails. The nature of computer is to produce pornography. I'm joking. I'm joking. But the nature of human being is to contribute to immortality of life, and through this to immortality of yourself, because your soul and spirit will continue in next generation, either in happiness if you make positive contribution, or in suffering if you make negative contribution. If you manage to think about this chain which you produce, I wrote my first book is written in Russian, and it was really devoted to this question of natural immortality. And when I grow up, I promise to translate.
I almost have the impression that when I'm listening to you, I keep thinking, how could this be started? And the only thing that comes to my mind is you have to capture young parents. Young parents. Parents of young children.
Yeah.
And at that time, begin educating the parents to educate the children, to think along lines of what is good for mankind, what is good for the universe. And I think, well, my God, how could you ever do that? How could you ever? You'd need a dictator that says, okay, everybody, whole world.
So you say I need to start teach Donald Trump.
You have to what?
To teach Donald Trump.
Or maybe not him. No, he
Or maybe I could say something to Bernie Sanders if he will ever listen.
No, I think you'd have to get to the young parents and make them understand what you're talking about, so they can transfuse it. And then maybe after 1,000 years, and by the way, along the lines, maybe whenever somebody shows signs of egomaniac or anything like that, wanting to rule the world and so on, maybe you'd have to put them on a separate desert island where they can't come into contact with anyone.
To make that island great again.
Or exterminate them. But anyway.
No, I would say that I am afraid that my today's presentation sounds like wishful thinking or something.
No, I think
it's great. This is not wishful thinking, and this is, I feel like this is the only chance. Despite, I believe that all peace actions are infinitely important because they make this time to come with new ideas, but old ideas we see they don't work. And what I was talking today, it is not my desire that human nature will be this. It is human nature. Do we like it or not? We are between past and future, and we are enjoying achievements of previous generations. And there is only one objective measure of human success. And that measure is contributing to immortality of humankind and life, to decreasing chances of catastrophe. And again, I had very few time to describe it, but this big goal is decomposable in solving all big problems we have today.
I really agree with you as far as people being between the past and the future, and we're conduits of the past. In many ways, the problem is we're prisoners of the past. We don't look to the future. We think only in terms of obeying the past.
Meat grinder.
Yeah. Your vision about making life eternal, I think, is very similar to what I understand as Jesus' message also, that he told his followers he would give them eternal life. But he didn't mean it the way that a lot of people think now, that you're going to get, you're going to come back to life and live in some other realm forever. I think he really meant it the way you're talking about it, in that we are connected already to the people in the future. And for all future generations, they're all going to be responding to what we do and say now. And and that if there's a wave that's happening.
I need to add this interesting also aspect.
Yeah, it's all about relationships.
Yeah, this is not. There is one facet of it, one part of it, which is so. I think that there is obvious kind of possibility of natural immortality. And actually, you and me, we cannot die a different day. Because if we die ever, it will be the day when the last person dies.
Yeah.
But there is another very interesting aspect, speaking about Jesus. If anybody has any hope to get to heaven, if anybody has any hope to get to heaven, it could be only a word for making absolute good. Not the good in opinion of Christians or Jews or Muslims or Buddhists or whatever, Hindus. Yes. Make gainers, make great gainers.
Yeah, make great gainers.
Yes, but if anybody wants really to get to heaven, and this is very serious matter for religious people, because you are dealing with either eternal bliss or eternally in lake of fire. And it could be only a word, not for your opinion of good, but for objective good, for absolute good. I could talk about this 24/7, but this is just a little bit. You have a question? I'm sorry.
One interesting thing that Jesus refused to have said, it's not in the main Gospels, but I think it's in the Thomas Gospel or someplace, is he's supposed to have said that the kingdom of God is here on earth, but men don't see it.
Exactly.
And I think that's really
Exactly,
important.
yeah. And
I think
the
it's
kingdom
something
of
really
God is
important to think
inside
about.
us.
I mean,
yeah.
however you interpret it. I mean, in other words, we're overlooking what we could be.
I don't speak
You know.
about religion specifically because it gives so many degrees of freedom, and there are and one of the reasons that it's a lot of tension between religions. And but definitely, if you think about Matthew 25:31 about dividing goats and sheep. Even if you believe that almost everything is just by faith, it is impossible to think that deeds are not important. And if you multiply that importance for eternity according to Christian visions, it's either eternal bliss or eternal damnation. If you multiply this for eternity, it's kind of big deal to think about objective good, right? Yes.
Yes.
Yes.